Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And for those of you who like the longer videos, and I know there's a few of you that do, I don't know how many, but this will be a longer video. So make sure you stay tuned because I'm just gonna go with the flow of the video and see where it goes. And we're gonna talk about some stuff that's unofficial. And I'm gonna try to throw a few things in there to kind of get your guys' take on it. And like I said, we're just going to see where this video goes and we're going to talk about it in this video. So this video is about T-Mobile, and I pulled up this article because this is really the first time that T-Mobile secures a full investment grade rating. And they never got this during the John era and when they first got going with LTE, starting around 2012, 2013 timeframe. So what I wanted to talk about in this video and where I kind of wanted to take it, and I wanted to look at T-Mobile from a competitive standpoint, right? Verizon and AT&T have never, and I mean never, dealt with a competitor of this reach and scale. Never. Even Sprint, when they were at their peak. You guys remember Sprint PCS, the quiet as a pen drop? Even when Sprint was at their peak and they had a good 3G network, Verizon and AT&T still never had a competitor that is at the scale of T-Mobile, and T-Mobile is still growing their scale. I am very confident when I say that Verizon and AT&T have never had to deal with a competitor at the type of scale where T-Mobile is, and T-Mobile is still growing that scale. So that hasn't stopped. So the way T-Mobile looks, like I said, a lot of this I'm gonna say unofficially because I do speak to people internally, and they give me tidbits and information, so I know a lot of stuff that's not public. So we're just, like I said, we're just gonna talk and see where this video goes. So internally, and I've seen this on the board, T-Mobile breaks down each segment that they compete in into its own business, so to speak. So there's T-Mobile consumer, and then they like, okay, this is the percentage of customers that we have in this segment. Then there's business. This is the percentage that we're at in business. Then there's the T-Mobile first responders, which they're now competing in, and they're going to win there too. They're taking agencies. If you saw that on the last quarterly, in the second quarter and the first quarter, they're taking first responder agencies. It's not highlighted. Nobody talked about it, but they're taking share there too. Trust me. So they have that. Then they have military, 50% off, which that's its own segment that they're competing into. That's a pool of customers that they're pulling to, military service members and the family members. So that, they have a certain percentage there too. Then they compete, which nobody challenged them and had any competitive response to, at scale, which is T-Mobile 55 plus, right? I think Verizon and AT&T have been trialing it maybe in like Florida, if I remember that correctly, but they never took it to full scale. Although I had been hearing that AT&T was going to take it to full scale, but that's not official yet. Nobody, that didn't come to fruition. So I'll ask about that to the contact. But for now, the only one that competes in that segment at scale is T-Mobile, so they dominate that segment. And I've been hearing in some regions like San Francisco, California, a buddy that I speak with there, a couple of other regional managers, they kill it. The 55 and plus it's huge port ins from Verizon and AT&T of customers in that demographic. So, like I said, taking it back to the competitive standpoint, this is the most and biggest threat to Verizon and AT&T ever in the wireless industry. Verizon and AT&T have constantly year after year dominated this industry with pure capital, which they've always had more, pure enterprise dominance and business because of the capabilities that the money has allowed them to get to. And now T-Mobile is severely cutting into that. And neither of them have really had a competitive response yet, right? The only thing that AT&T is doing correctly now is they're spending a ton of money to pay for phone subsidies to get people in store. And it's working. I think that's probably the biggest driver at this point in time for AT&T is them paying off phones at a good high cost, right? You get the iPhone for free, big Samsung, any condition upgrade program. And we'll hear more from AT&T about that in September. So stay tuned for that announcement. And Verizon really doesn't have anything, right? They don't have the largest, biggest, and best 5G network. That goes to T-Mobile. Verizon doesn't have the best promos for the devices. So Verizon is just kind of there, right? They still pledge and push that they have the more premium product, but the consumer and the market is not reacting to that anymore. Not in 2022 going into 2023. So that, ladies and gentlemen, plays into T-Mobile's favor in a huge way. And it's allowing T-Mobile to get the market onto their side, right? It starts with the investment grade, which you're seeing in this article. It starts with the media, and then it trickles down to the analysts, investments, the board members. Everybody's on board. And of course, Deutsche Telekom plays into that as well. When T-Mobile said they would get a bunch of brand ambassadors, they weren't playing around. They have a huge following, and it's getting bigger by the day. And that's essentially what's allowing T-Mobile to serve the customer base that they have, to gain new customers, and continue growing. So I do think across the board, in all of the segments that I mentioned that they compete in, right? Consumer, business, 55, first responders, military. I think T-Mobile is competitively priced better in all of them. There is not one segment that I would say that AT&T and Verizon are competitively priced better. It's just not the case because T-Mobile has a lower cost. They have a lower cost. And if that cost is not to your liking, there are other things you can do to get a cheaper price. 20% insider discount. Add 2 lines, get a 3rd line free. Get a promotional offering. Get $650 to pay off your device with the carrier you're with. There's other workarounds to this, right? Because if T-Mobile pays off the device with your other carrier and you bring it on the BYOD, you no longer now have a payment on your phone. So that automatically lowers your bill, or it makes your bill cheaper on the T-Mobile side. So T-Mobile is in a very strong position right now that will continue growing each and every quarter. When I talk on these quarterly earnings, some of the comments that I get, it's like you guys are saying the wireless industry ends tomorrow. T-Mobile is chipping away at the lead every quarter. Like I said, last quarter, they just reported a higher free cash flow versus Verizon, and Verizon is trending down. Although overall Verizon still makes the big bucks, but T-Mobile is starting to cut into that. And of course, we will monitor the net income on a quarterly basis. And like I said, I'm no financial advisor, but that's what we're going to continue monitoring. And on top of that, like I said, I think T-Mobile has the better pricing. They are just priced better and more competitively. And they have better customer service. Now, I know the comments are going to come in. Well, anecdotally, I've had a bad experience with T-Mobile customer service. I get it. I understand it. But at scale, the Net Promoter Score and JD Power, they still have T-Mobile as the better customer service. And I just think that's true. I've dealt with their customer service, and it is phenomenally better than Verizon and AT&T. I mean, I can't stress that enough. I've had so many issues with AT&T. I mean, it's ridiculous how many issues I've had. Just for example, quick, 1 year, I tried to pay to get to the 50% off so I could upgrade early on an AT&T plan. using the AT&T Next Up program. So I used a credit card to get the payment to the 50% paid off. And as I paid that, the payment went to my Uverse account instead of going to the upgrade. And I did that in store. So now I had, a $300+ credit balance on the Uverse account, and I couldn't upgrade. See, those are just issues, and I don't want to get into too much detail on that, but those are just issues that are going to piss customers off in the worst way. Now, I'm not saying that that's not happening with T-Mobile, because I'm sure there are some stories out there as they are with any carrier, but I still think the stories are far less with T-Mobile. Because I don't, for one, T-Mobile's app is really good, so I don't have to call that much. Actually, I don't really have to call them at all. I don't have any issues. Verizon and AT&T, I had to constantly call. There were issues that weren't resolved, financing that wasn't correct, so I had to constantly call. And that's how I figured out towards the end that Verizon was starting to move to a more digital model, because as you called 611, you were immediately redirected back to the app. Now, I know there's workarounds to get through, but some of the average consumers, they're not going to know how to get that workaround going. So that's something that Verizon and AT&T will need to address, right? AT&T has other problems, and of course we can get into that in another video. They got to fix the app. They got to make it more modern. I mean, there's plenty of other things they have to do on their system. And Verizon just has to give you actual access, a simple access to customer service. Not this whole, we're going to redirect you back to the app and then you can schedule a call back on the app. No, that's not going to work. That's going to tick people off. So that's the first part that I wanted to cover. Right? T-Mobile is competitively positioned in all the segments that they compete in. And now they are competing at scale, at a bigger scale. And that scale, I can guarantee you, is improving every quarter. They are growing that network purposely. The reason I say purposely is because they see the results. They add sites, they grow. They add sites in Timbuktu, they grow customers. It's like these people have been waiting for a savior, so to speak, in these parts. I mean, where T-Mobile is now getting in the states of Montana, South Dakota, as they get to a competitive percentage of the population covered, the port numbers are crazy, ladies and gentlemen. When I say they are nuts, it's like 25-1, 32-2. The ports are nuts in T-Mobile's favor. And yet we have yet to see a competitive response, a real competitive response that'll actually be meaningful from AT&T or Verizon. So that was the first part. The second part that I wanted to get into, for those of you who stuck around in the video, right, and that actually watched the entire video and actually get the info, I'm going to let you guys in on a little leak here, a scoop, right? Like I said, it's unofficial because there's nothing out yet. Article is coming within the coming days on this. And this relates to fixed wireless access. And again, this is just a bonus for those of you who stick around for the entire length of the video. So T-Mobile is planning, or not planning, they are going to release a new tiered fixed wireless access plan. Now, the defined details are not out yet. I don't know if it's just a single tiered plan or if you're going to be able to choose from like 2 or 3 tiered plans, right? And I don't know the amount that's going to be allowed. If it's 100 gigs, 200, 300, 500, I don't know at this point. But that's what's going to come. And what's going to happen here in the coming days, and that's why I didn't want to really discuss that because I don't have the full details. But what's going to happen here is T-Mobile is going to start allowing any and all addresses to be approved for fixed wireless access up on checking the availability tool. Now, hear me out. I know that's going to probably confuse a lot of you, scratch your head like, wait a minute, what about capacity? Right? So what's going to happen is if you fall outside of the approval for the unlimited tier, which that's still going to be around, the truly unlimited home internet is going to be around. But if your address falls outside of that, you're going to be given the option to choose from the tiered plans. And that's going to be capped, right? So once you hit that 300 gigs, that's probably going to be it for you. You're probably going to be throttled down to a 3G speed, and that's going to be it. But from what I'm hearing, T-Mobile has been vigorously learning and testing ever since they launched this product. And they're seeing in the numbers that not everyone needs truly unlimited. Actually, it's quite a low percentage versus the amount of the base that they have. So they think they have enough capacity. And like I said, this is any address that falls within T-Mobile's native coverage. So the engineering team, right, they're still adding more spectrum on air. They're still buying more spectrum in Auction 108. They're building more sites with the Sprint Keep sites. And then eventually small cells will go on air. But like I said, those are just part of the regular build. This is not separate capital that T-Mobile set aside for fixed wireless access. They are still only allowing you to use the extra capacity, so to speak. But now with offering tiered data plans on fixed wireless access, it gives them more control over the usage, right? If you give somebody truly unlimited, it's going to be tough to track the usage because they could go crazy. BitTorrents, 5 terabytes a month, and that's going to really slam the network. But if you have tiered plans and capped at 300 gigs and that person only uses 250 a month, that's a win-win for T-Mobile because now there's less usage and you're still making money. And by the way, I am being told that those tier plans are going to be cheaper versus the $50 unlimited price point for fixed wireless access. So that's really happening. I've been tracking this for several weeks. I've reached out to contacts. They said, yes, this is going to come. They are really going to do this. So pretty soon, the approval ratings, and that was one of my complaints that you guys heard me say in the videos, that I've been checking addresses for potential neighborhoods that I would like to maybe move into and buy a house. And the approval rating was like less than 1% of actually getting the service in those areas. So I know that's been a problem for T-Mobile because each store rep in every store, from what I'm being told, has to, and this is a home internet goal, has to at least check 80 addresses per store employee. They have to at least check 80 addresses. And from what I'm being told, it's a very low percentage of people that actually get approved. It's like 5%. With this new plan, that 5% is probably going to shoot up to 99%. So some people that I talked to already, they see it. It's kind of split. Some see this as a negative. Some are telling me like, whoa, man, they're trying to load up this network vigorously, right? Like overselling, which in that sense, if we go by history, T-Mobile is known for that. They oversell. But then some are saying, well, you could look at it as them just, adding another mobile device onto the network with just a little bit more usage, right? Let's say you get a customer in there that chooses the T-Mobile home internet at 100 gigs, right? And they say that's enough. That shouldn't slam the sector too much, right? It's just like if a person comes in and they add a line and that person uses that mobile device and they use 100 gigs, right? But now you're just using the 100 gigs on that router. And then at the 100 gigs, that's pretty much going to be it. So you as the consumer, you kind of have to look at your usage and you have to know, okay, 100 gigs is enough for me. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't stay home a lot. Or this is going to be for my summer home, my cottage, whatever, right? And if you're more of a heavier user, but you don't need the terabyte and you can just get away with 500 gigs, then I think that should be an option as well. So, like I said, it's a very interesting approach, but from what I'm told, and this is kind of the feedback that I'm getting, from some other contexts, is this is T-Mobile trying to shut Verizon down while they're behind on the C-band build. Because right now, Verizon can't offer that. There's no way. They don't have enough capacity at scale to offer tiered plans for fixed wireless access. So again, this is T-Mobile trying to compete to soak up the opportunity that Verizon will eventually gain as they grow the C-band bill. For example, this is just an example, and I'll probably close out the video here. I don't want it to get too long. For example, right? El Paso, city that I live in, N41 build, 99.7% complete. Verizon C-band, 0. Right? There's the opportunity difference. Verizon here can strictly sell on millimeter wave fixed wireless access, which is still comparatively a very small percentage of El Paso. Now T-Mobile, right? Like you guys have seen me on the channel use fixed wireless access at my house. T-Mobile now has the opportunity to almost a 2-year opportunity, head start wise, to outgrow Verizon and take up those opportunities, right? And that's just in theory, that's a thought experiment, right? Because we don't know. We just don't know. Even if T-Mobile is going to approve that plan in the coming days, and there'll be an article out on it that I'll cover. But T-Mobile is going to approve every address. But that doesn't mean that every single person in the United States is going to sign up for it, if that makes sense. And it should make sense. But T-Mobile still wants the store reps, the sale reps, to have a better opportunity to make the sale. So that's what they're looking at. They look at the demand, right? They're seeing like, damn, all of these addresses are being checked in store or people at home. And then they look at the ratio. They're like, oh, we just had 50,000 addresses that were checked. And out of the 50,000, 47,000 of them didn't get approved. Now that ratio is going to be way higher. Now it's going to give a bigger opportunity for T-Mobile to make the sale, which in return, you could kind of say is going to suck for the sale rep, because now they're going to be made to sell more of this. And if they don't sell it based on the approval rating, they're probably going to be put on the performance review, because now T-Mobile is going to be like, hey, you had 99% approval rates on these address checks, but you only sold 3. They're going to be like, no, you need to sell more. That's what that's going to lead to. But I just wanted to give you guys more insight in this video, kind of like a thank you for sticking around. This is a longer video. For those of you who like the longer videos, this is a real long one. And I just wanted to kind of speak on the next step for T-Mobile and to kind of share with you how they're competing. And with some of these moves that they're making competitively, they're not even expecting a response from any carrier. Maybe Verizon responds to this at a later time when they get more C-band at scale. But for now, T-Mobile is in that driver's seat when it comes to mid-band at scale. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section down below. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe to the channel. Follow my social media outlets for more updates and interactions. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. See y'all in the next one. Peace.